So today I'll be sharing Anita Desai's story, a very nice selection by Sir. I don't know, it is especially for me, I hope so, because it's one of my favorite stories also. So the title of the story is A Devoted Son. Before starting the story, I would just like to tell you something related to the storyline, not the writer. Can we discuss about the writer also, sir? Anita Desai is still living. She is 88 years old and she was born in Missouri in 1937. And you would be very glad to know that she has been shortlisted for the Booker Prize for three of her books. And she has been nominated and awarded with many international and national awards, Padma Bhushan also. I hope I'm not wrong. So here, our devoted son. It's a powerful narrative that captures the beauty and struggle of familial bonds. Familial bonds, family members, the bond which we share in a family. And she's always very much famous for writing many realistic things rather than fantasy. So here you'll be seeing a very common picture in all Indian families where we are still in a transition after the independence, moving towards modernization but still having traditional values. So this is a transition period and still now we are still undergoing it. So here in this storyline, it's especially between parents and children, and it's a story that encourages us to reflect on love, a duty, and a very delicate balance between care and independence, between love and freedom. So I hope the storyline is little bit clear. After the lunch, you are there with me, and I hope I have all the ears to listen. So can we start with the story, dear colleagues? Yes. A devoted son. When the results appeared in the morning papers, Rakesh scanned them. Barefoot at the garden gate, then went up the steps to the veranda where his father sat, sipping his morning tea and bowed down to touch his feet. A first division son? His father asked, smiling, reaching for the papers. At the top of the list, Papa, Rakesh murmured, as if awed, first in the country. The family whooped and danced. The whole day long, visitors streamed to the small yellow house at the end of the road to congratulate the parents, to clap Rakesh on the back, and fill the house with sounds and colors of a festival. There were garlands, sweets, party clothes, and gifts, all in a multicolored whirl of pride. Rakesh was the first son in the family to receive an education, and so much had been sacrificed in order to send him to school and then the medical college. At last, the fruits of this sacrifice had arrived, golden and glorious. To everyone who came to him to say, Mubarak Verma ji, your son has brought you glory, the father said, yes. And do you know what was the first thing he did when he saw the results this morning? He came and touched my feet. He bowed down and touched my feet. This moved many of the women in the crowd so much that they were seen to raise the ends of their saris and dab at their ear at the tears, while the men reached out for the betel leaves and sweetmeats that were offered around on trays and shook their heads in wonder. One does not often see such behavior in sons anymore. They all agreed. Leaving the house, some of the women said, at least on such an occasion they might have served pure ghee sweets. And some of the men said, don't you think old Verma was giving himself aids? He needn't think we don't remember that he comes from the vegetable market himself. His father used to sell vegetables, and he has never seen the inside of a school. There was more envy in their voices, and it was, of course, inevitable. Not every sun in that shabby little colony at the edge of the city was destined to shine as Rakesh shone. And who knew that better than the parents themselves? And that was only the beginning. The thesis he wrote for his MD brought Rakesh still greater glory. He won a scholarship. He went to the USA. That was what his father learned to call it and taught the whole family to say. Not America, which was what the ignorant neighbors call it, but with a grand familiarity, the USA, where he pursued his career in the most prestigious of all hospitals. What was more, he came back. He actually returned to that small yellow house in the shabby colony right at the end of the road where the rubbish vans tipped out their stinking contents for pigs to nose in and rag pickers to build their shacks on, all steaming and smoking just outside the neat wire fences and well tended gardens. To this, Rakesh returned. And the first thing he did on entering the house was to slip out of the embraces of his sisters and brothers and go down and touch his father's feet. As for his mother, she took pleasure over the strange fact that he had not married in America. He had not brought home a foreign wife, as all her neighbors had warned her. Instead, he agreed almost without argument to marry a girl she had picked out in her own village, the daughter of a childhood friend, a plump and uneducated girl, so complacent that she slipped into the household and settled in like a charm. Too good natured to even try and make Rakesh leave home and set up independently as any other girl might have done. What was more, she was pretty, really pretty, after the birth of their first baby, a son. And then what did it matter? For some years, Rakesh worked in the city hospital and was made a director before he left up his own clinic. He took his parents in his car, a new sky blue ambassador, to see the clinic when it was built, and the large signboard over the door on which his name was printed in letters of red with a row of degrees and qualifications to follow. It like so many little black slaves of the regent. Thereafter, his fame seemed to grow just a little dimmer, or maybe it was only that everyone in the town had grown accustomed to it at last. But it was also the beginning of his fortune, for he now became known as only the best but also the richest doctor in town. However, all this was not accomplished in the wink of an eye. It was the achievement of a lifetime and it took up Rakesh's whole life. At the time he set up his clinic, his father had grown into an old man, retired from his post at the kerosene dealer's depot, at which he had worked for 40 years. His mother died soon after, positively happy, for it was her own son who ministered her in her last illness, who sat pressing her feet at the last moment. Such a son a few women had borne. For it had to be admitted that Rakesh was not only a devoted son who obeyed his parents and humored his wife and showed concern equally for his children and his patients, but there was actually a brain inside this beautifully polished and formed body of good manners and kind nature. He was an excellent doctor, a really fine surgeon. How one man, and a man born to illiterate parents, had achieved combined and conducted such a medley of virtues no one could understand, but all acknowledged his talent and skill. It is a strange fact, however, that success, if displayed for too long, ceases to dazzle. Having retired from work and having lost his wife, the old father very quickly went to pieces. He fell ill so frequently with such mysterious diseases that even his son could no longer make out when it was something of significance and when it was really a peevish whim. He sat on his narrow bed most of the day and developed an annoying habit of stretching out, lying absolutely still, allowing the whole family to think he was dead. And then suddenly sitting up, spitting out a big gob of beetle juice as if to mock their behavior. He did it once too often. There had been a big party in the house, a birthday party for the youngest son, and the celebrations had to stop suddenly when the daughter in law discovered, or thought she discovered, that the old man, stretched out on his bed, had lost his pulse. The party broke up, dissolved, even turned into a band of mourners when the old man sat up and the daughter in law received a gob of red beetle juice right on the edge of her new organza sari. After that, no one much cared if he sat up on his bed, spitting, or lay down as a corpse, except, of course, for the pearl amongst pearls, his son, Rakesh. It was Rakesh who brought him morning tea, not in the china cups from which the rest of the family drank, but in the old man's favorite brass tumbler, and sat at the edge of his bed and discussed, or rather read out the morning news to his father. It made no difference to him that his father made no response apart from spitting. It was Rakesh who, on returning from the clinic in the evening, persuaded the old man to come out of his room and take the evening air out in the garden, on the divan in the corner of the open veranda. On summer nights, he ordered the servants to carry out the old man's bed onto the lawn and himself helped his father down the steps and onto the bed for a night under the stars. All this was gratifying for the old man. What was not so gratifying was that Rakesh even began to supervise his father's diet. One day, when the father was really sick, having ordered his daughter in law to make him a dish of suji halwa and eaten it with a saucer full of cream, Rakesh marched into the room not with his usual respectful step but with the confidence of a famous doctor and declared, "No more halwa for you, Baba. We must be sensible at your age. If you have, if you must have something sweet, Veena will cook a little kheer that is light, just a little rice and milk, but nothing fried, nothing rich. We cannot have this happening again." The old man, weak and feeble now after a day's illness, opened his eyes. Rather, they fell open with shock, and he stared at his own son with disbelief. A son who actually refused his father the food he craved? No, that was impossible. But Rakesh had turned his back to him and was cleaning up the litter of bottles and packets on the medicine shelf and did not notice while Veena slipped silently out of the room with a little smirk that only the old man saw and hated. Halwa was only the first item to be crossed off the old man's diet. Soon everything fried, then everything sweet, and eventually everything that the old man enjoyed. The meals that arrived for him on the shining stainless steel tray twice a day were very simple, frugal to say the least, dry bread, boiled lentils, boiled vegetables, and if there was a bit of chicken or fish, that was boiled too. If called for anything, any another helping, Rakesh himself could come to the door, gaze at him sadly, and shake his head, saying, "Now, Papa, we must be careful. We cannot risk another illness. But the old man tried to bribe his grandchildren into buying him sweets, and now he missed his wife, a generous cook. Whispering, he said to his grandson, "Here's 50 paisa." As he stuffed the coins into a tight, hot fist, "Run down to the shop at the crossroads and buy me 30 paisa worth of jalebis, and you can spend the remaining 20 on yourself. Will you do that?" He got away with it once or twice, but then was found out. The conspirator was scolded by his father, smacked by his mother, and Rakesh came storming into the room. "Now, Papa, are you trying to turn my little son into a liar? Quite apart from spoiling your own stomach, you're spoiling him as well. You're encouraging him to lie to his own parents. You should have heard the lies he told his mother when she saw him bringing those jalebis wrapped up in a filthy newspaper. I don't allow anyone in my house to buy sweets in the bazaar, Papa. Surely you know that. There's cholera in the city, typhoid, gastroenteritis. I see these cases daily in the hospital. How can I allow my own family to run such risk?" The old man sighed, lay down in the corpse position, but that worried no one any longer. There was only one pleasure left to the old man now, and those were visits from elderly neighbors. Old Bhatia from next door sometimes came to see him. If Rakesh was at home, he would help his father down the steps into the garden and arrange him on his night bed under the tree and leave the two old men to chew betel leaves and discuss the ills of their individual bodies with combined passion. "At least you have a doctor in the house to look after you," sighed Bhatia one day. "Look after me?" cried Varma angrily. He, he does not even give me enough to eat." "What?" said Bhatia. "Doesn't give you enough to eat? Your own son?" "My own son. If I ask him for one more piece of bread, he says, 'No, Papa, I have weighed it myself. I can't allow you to have one more than 200 grams a day.' He weighs the food he gives me, Bhatia. He has scales to weigh it on. That is what it has come to." "Never," said Bhatia in disbelief. "Is it possible, even in these terrible times, for a son to refuse his father food?" "Let me tell you," Vanma whispered eagerly. "Today the family was having fried fish. I could smell it. I called to my daughter in law to bring me a piece. She came to the door and said, 'No.'" "Said no?" It was Bhatia's voice. "No?" She said, "No." Rakesh had ordered her to give me nothing fried. No butter, he says. No oil. No butter? No oil? How does he expect his father to live? This is how he treats me. After all, I have brought him up, gave him an education, made him a doctor. Great doctor. Is this the way great doctors treat their fathers, Katya? There was cold comfort, always in complaining to neighbors. Verma found himself weakening and soon becoming a genuinely sick man. Powders and pills and mixtures were not only brought in when dealing with a crisis like an upset stomach, but became a regular part of his diet. Rather became his diet. There were pills to regulate his bowel movements, pills to bring down his blood pressure, pills to deal with his arthritis, and eventually pills to keep his heart beating. In between, there were panicky rushes to the hospital, some humiliating experience with a stomach pump and enema, which left him frightened and helpless. He cried and complained. But if he complained, Rakesh would simply open another bottle of pills and force him to take one. I have my duty to you, Papa, he said when his father begged to let me off. Let me be, Verma begged. Let me die. It would be better. I do not want to live, only to eat your medicines. Papa, be reasonable. I leave that to you, the father cried. Leave me alone. Let me die now. I cannot live like this. Lying all day on his pillows, fed every few hours by his daughter in law's own hands, visited by every member of the family daily, and then he says he does not want to live like this. Rakesh was heard to say, laughing to someone outside the door. Once, when old Bhatia had come to see him, the family sat together under the temple tree and they heard him cry, God is calling me and they won't let me go. The quantities of vitamins and tonics he was made to take were not altogether useless. They kept him alive and even gave him a kind of strength. It was as though he were straining at a rope, trying to break it, and it would not break. It was still strong, but he only hurt himself trying. In the evenings, the servants would come, grip his bed, and carry it out to the veranda carelessly. In answer to his complaints, they said Dr. Sahib had told them he must take the evening air, and the evening air they would make him take. Veena, smiling, would appear, pile up the pillows under his head so high that his back ached. Let me lie down, he begged. I can't sit up any more. Try, Papa, Rakesh said. You can, if you try, she said, drifted away to the other end of the veranda where her transistor radio vibrated to the tunes from the cinema that she listened to all day. So there he sat like some stiff corpse, terrified, watching his grandsons play cricket, in danger of getting one of their heart spun balls in his eye, but still over the bed, sitting like a corpse. At last, the sky blue ambassador arrived. The cricket game stopped at once. The car drove in smartly, and the doctor, the great doctor, all in white, stepped out. Someone ran up to take his bag, others to escort him up the steps. Will you have tea? His wife asked. Or a cold drink? Shall I fry you some samosas? But he did not reply, or even a glance in her direction. Ever a devoted son, he first went to the corner where his father sat gazing at nothing. He was stiff and silent. He did not turn his head to look at his son. Papa, his son said, tenderly sitting down at the edge of the bed and reaching out to rub his feet. Old Verma tucked his feet under him out of the way and continued to gaze stubbornly into the yellow air of the summer evening. Papa, I am home. How are you feeling, Papa? Then Verma turned and looked at his son. His face was so out of control and all in pieces that the multitude of expressions that crossed it could not make up a whole and convey to the famous man exactly what his father thought of him, his skill, or his art. I am dying. Let me die, I tell you. Papa, are you joking? His son smiled at him lovingly. I have brought you a new tonic to make you feel better. You must take it. It will make you feel stronger again. Here it is. Promise me you will take it regularly, Papa. There was a pause. Varma's mouth worked as hard as though he still had a gob of betel in it. His supply of betel had cut off years ago. Then he spat out some words as sharp and bitter as poison into his son's face. Keep your tonic. I want none. I want none. I won't take any more of your medicines. None. Never. And he swept the bottle out of his son's hand with a wave of his own, suddenly grand, suddenly effective. His son jumped for the bottle. The bottle was smashed. Thick brown syrup had splashed up, staining his white trousers. His wife let out a cry and came running all around the old man. There was once again noise. There was once again attention. There was once again hubbub. He gave one push to the pillows at the back and dislodged them so he could sink down on his back, quite flat again. He closed his eyes, pointed his chin at the ceiling like some dire prophet, saying as firmly as a sick old man could, groaning now, God is calling me, now let me go.